Hi everyone, welcome to my channel Bibbidi Bobbidi Books. My name is Ellie and this is going to be my June reading wrap up. In the month of June, I read a grand total of 5 books. I'm going to talk you through my reviews for these books in this video. I will try to remember to leave timestamps down below, so if you want to jump ahead to a specific book to hear my opinions on it, please do feel free to go ahead and do so. But yeah, I'm just going to jump straight in with the first book that I read in June, which was Muse of Nightmares by Lani Talia. So this is the second book in a young adult fantasy series, and I think this might be one of my favourite fantasy series of all time. So that's high praise indeed. I just adore this world. It's so creative, it's so beautiful, and Lani Talia's writing is so lyrical that you just fall into her worlds and you just get swept away with her beautiful stories. So yeah, I absolutely adored this one. If you haven't heard of this series before, the first book follows two main perspectives. The first perspective is of a man called Laszlo Strange, who is an orphan of war, and he was raised in this monastery to become a monk, but he doesn't really suit the lifestyle of being a monk because he's very much a dreamer and he wants more from his life. And he's particularly infatuated with this story about this mythical city known as Weep, which actually got cut off from the rest of the world many years ago, and no one actually knows what happened to this city or the people who live there. In fact, no one can even remember the city's real name. Every time they recall the city or they think about the city, they just hear the word Weep. And Laszlo is fascinated by this story, and one day he ends up visiting a library and he decides to never leave, and he basically just becomes a librarian and he spends his time amongst the stacks of books reading about this story, and then he gets the opportunity to actually go ahead and join this group of people who are trying to find this city. So that is very much his dream come true, and he goes off on this adventure to try and find where this city is and to uncover its secrets. And then the second perspective is of a female character called Sarai, and I don't want to say too much about her character because I don't want to give anything away, but she tells her story, and she is actually residing within this city of Weep. And it's so interesting seeing our two characters. There's a really gorgeous form of magic in this story that involves dreams, and it's so creative and beautiful and vivid and bright. And I also really love the love story in this series. I wouldn't necessarily say that the love story is the main focus, but it's something that I just thoroughly enjoyed. It's not like a smutty romance at all. It's a very pure kind of romance between two characters that haven't had the opportunity to experience love before, and it's just so sweet, and it's just got gorgeous world building, gorgeous characters, gorgeous writing, and I couldn't recommend it highly enough. I was really anxious to pick up the second book, but I'm so glad that I did because I thought it was a beautiful way to round out the story. So yeah, I had a great time reading that book. The next book that I read was Actual Age Eve Brown by Talia Hibbert. So I actually read this one on audio because I did a lot of driving this month. If you don't know, I've recently moved and it was a 5-hour drive up here, so I ended up picking this one up on audio, and I enjoyed this one. I do love Talia Hibbert's writing. This is the third book in her Brown Sisters trilogy, which is a trilogy of romance novels, adult romance novels, and each book follows a different sister from the same family. So this third one follows Eve Brown, who is the youngest sister within this family, and she is quite different from her siblings because her two older sisters are very high flyers. They are really successful career women and they seem to have their life in order, whereas Eve Brown really struggles to know where she wants to go in life. She tends to flip between different jobs. She tends to kind of quit before things go wrong, and so she's yeah, kind of struggling to find her place, I suppose. And then one day her parents have had enough of her sort of flitting between jobs and giving up on things before she's had a chance to really give it a good go, and so they decide to cut her off from her trust fund because this is a very wealthy family. And so Eve is forced to try and find an actual job and stick to it to, you know, be able to live. And she ends up driving off in a little bit of a huff because she's annoyed at her parents for putting her in this position. And she ends up finding this advertisement for a B&B who are looking for a chef. And Eve actually really enjoys cooking, so she decides that it's a sign and she decides to just go ahead and try out for this position as a chef. She kind of waltzes her way in there and somehow manages to convince the really grumpy B&B owner that he should hire her. And we follow her as she takes on this new job, and of course it's a romance, so a romance ends up happening between her and the owner of this B&B, and it's a sunshine grump trope. So Eve is a very sunshiny character. She's described as being like a Disney princess. She listens to a lot of music, she wears bright colours, she's really fun, whereas the love interest, Jacob, is a very stoic character. He comes across quite frosty until you get to know him, and he's kind of the polar opposite of Eve, really, so it's quite fun seeing their dynamic together. And it has a really fun meet cute as well, because when Eve arrives at this B&B, she actually ends up accidentally hitting Jacob, the B&B owner, with her car, which is just a really awkward and funny situation for the two characters to meet and interact. So yeah, I had a lot of fun with this one. I don't think I enjoyed it as much as the other two books that I've read in this series, just because I'm not such a fan of the sunshine grump trope, and I wasn't that obsessed with the main love interest character, and I feel like when you're reading romance you kind of need to fancy the love interest a little bit, and it just wasn't quite doing it for me. But I did really enjoy the humour within here, and I just love Talia Hibbert's writing, so yeah, I had a good time and it was the perfect way to pass my time whilst I was doing my long drive. Okay, the next book that I read was Six Crimson Cranes by Elizabeth Lim. So this is the first book in a young adult fantasy duology, and this book is based on the Six Swan Brothers fairy tale, and I had a really lovely time with this one. So in this story we follow our main character, who is a princess, and she ends up getting cursed by her stepmother, so no one can recognise her. Basically she has her face hidden. She actually has this bowl placed on her head that she can't take off, so no one can see her face or recognise her, and her six brothers get turned into cranes, and our main character can't say any words, she can't speak, because for every word that passes her lips, one of her brothers will die. So there's this awful curse that's been placed on her and her brothers, and she's trying to find a way to break this curse, and we follow her on her adventures, really, on trying to find a way to get rid of this curse, but also to rid the realm of this evil stepmother figure. And it's such a fun and whimsical tale. What I really enjoyed about this is how much voice the main character had. Even though she can't speak verbally, she still had so much agency, she still had so much personality, and I just love that about her. She's so determined, she doesn't take anything from anyone, she very much stands up for herself. She's, you know, put in a really terrible situation and she just gets on with it, and she has so much resilience, and I really love that about her character. I really enjoyed the themes of family in here, and this is a story that really grew on me because I knew that I would probably like this book, because I tend to enjoy whimsical fantasy and enjoy things that have a fairy tale-like quality to them, so I knew that I was going to enjoy this. But I was really surprised by how much I had become invested in this world and in these characters by the end of the story, because I was so moved by some of the moments towards the end of this book. So yeah, this is a book that really crept up on me and I just got swept away. It's a gorgeous world. I think I said before, the world building is really fantastic. The descriptions are wonderful. There's magic and whimsy, there's dragons, and it was just a really fun time. So I'm very much looking forward to picking up the second book in this series. Ooh, also, I forgot to say that there's also a very cute animal companion in this. Our main character actually has some magic, and she created this origami bird called, I think it's called Kiki, and it's so cute. She can actually communicate with this little bird by mind speaking, and it's just adorable. So again, another reason to pick up this book. Okay, so the next book that I want to talk to you about is The Wager by David Grann. So this is a non-fiction book about a British ship called The Wager, and I am so excited to talk to you about this one because I thought this was fantastic. I actually think this is probably my favourite book that I've read this year. It's definitely up there, and that's really surprising to me because non-fiction is a genre that I don't typically gravitate towards, and I tend to find some of the books a little bit dry or a little bit difficult to get into. But that was absolutely not the case for this one. This was so gripping. So this book discusses a period of time in the 1700s when Britain was at war with Spain, and it's a time where they really struggled to get enough people to man these warships, and they would actually kidnap people off the streets of the city to force them to go onto these warships. Any able-bodied seaman was basically captured and just forced, as I said, to become a crew on these warships. They were so desperate for people to go ahead and become sailors that they actually went to retirement homes, and they kidnapped essentially all these elderly people, anyone that had any past history of being a seaman, and forced them to go on board these ships. Some of these people were so ill that they had to be carried on stretchers, which is just crazy. And this follows a squadron of ships, one of which was the Wager, who were taking part in this secret mission to try and find this Spanish galleon, this ship that is filled with treasure. And the book basically follows the Wager and its crew and all they had to go through in order to try and survive whilst they were on this secret mission. And it is so intense. Honestly, the things that these people faced was ridiculous. Even just the day-to-day mechanics of being a seaman was just crazy. They had to face these incredible storms, and they had to climb up these really high rigging, and they faced famine, and they faced scurvy and disease, and the living conditions were ridiculous. And the Wager actually ended up getting shipwrecked, and the crew were basically marooned on this island for months. Hello, my camera battery just died because I'm an idiot and didn't charge it before filming this. So I'm really sorry. I think I was in the middle of gushing about The Wager. So basically this is just a fantastic non-fiction book. I think I was saying about how The Wager itself actually ended up being shipwrecked off the coast of Patagonia, and the crew were forced to basically live on this desolate island for several months, and they had to survive. It's kind of like Lord of the Flies but in real life, and there's drama, there's antics, there's mutiny, there's murder. It's so fascinating. And the survivors actually ended up building a craft out of bits of the Wager wreckage and stuff that they found, and they managed to sail this like dodgy ship that they just kind of patched together across these storm-wrecked seas for over 100 days before they got to the coast of Brazil. And yeah, it's just insane what these people went through. I had to keep reminding myself that this is a true story because it read just like something fantastical, and it's just so gripping. I also really loved how the author presented several sides to the story, because at one point the crew of the Wager ended up splitting off, and different people tell different accounts of what actually happened when the Wager was shipwrecked. Some say that there was a mutiny that happened, others don't. Some people say that someone was murdered, other people say it was something different. And I really like how the author presented just the kind of accounts from different people and left it up to us as a reader to decide what we think actually happened, because of course we can never know what truly happened. But yeah, it was just an absolutely fascinating read. Highly recommend this to you if you think any of that sounds interesting, even if you're not a non-fiction reader, because I'm not really a non-fiction reader, and I still had a fantastic time and was in awe of how this author managed to turn that subject matter into something so gripping and fast-paced. So yeah, I love this one, as I'm sure you can probably tell, and just pick it up, please. And the final book that I read in June was Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. I caved in to the hype. This is a, I would say, new adult fantasy romance story. It's the first in a series that I think it's going to be 5 books long. It's going to be a big series, and this book has taken the internet by storm. It's been all over BookTok and Bookstagram and BookTube. Everybody has been ranting and raving about this one, so I decided to cave in and pick it up for myself, and I buddy read this one with my good friend Martina, and we had a lot of fun reading this together. I feel like we were kind of like giddy school children whilst reading this. It reminded me of being back in school, you know, when I was like obsessed with Twilight. During those times, it kind of like threw me back into that, because it was just a fun time. I will say this isn't the best written novel ever, and you do have to suspend your disbelief because there are quite a lot of silly situations that don't really make that much sense. But if you're just in this for a good time, and if you enjoy angsty fantasy romance, then I think that you're really going to enjoy this. If you enjoy ACOTAR, then I think you're going to really enjoy this one, because it had a lot of similarities to that series as well. So what is this about? This is a book about a girl called Violet, and it's set in this fantasy world which is ravaged by war, and the people who live in this kingdom are basically conscripted, and they are encouraged to attend this war school to train up to help the war effort. So you can either train up to be a medic or a scribe, so that you can analyse previous battles, or the most prestigious position is to train up to be a dragon rider. But that's incredibly dangerous, because the students who decide to try and be a dragon rider have to go through these incredibly deadly trials to kind of prove that they have what it takes to be a dragon rider, and it's very fierce competition, and only a few are successful in being able to bond with a dragon. So it's a really prestigious position, but also a incredibly dangerous position. And our main character Violet has actually always wanted to be a scribe like her father, but her mum, who is the general of the army, forces her to train up to be a dragon rider, and we basically follow her as she's trying to survive this ridiculous school and to survive all of these really deadly challenges. And she's on a back foot because she hasn't had the training that other people have had. Her body tends to fail her quite a lot. She has a physical condition where her joints they can dislocate easier than other people. Her ligaments are loose. Not quite sure exactly what is wrong with her, but she has a lot of physical problems basically, and she's shorter than the other people. She's not as strong, so she feels like she's very much on the back foot. But we follow her as she kind of goes to this school, and she really does kind of prove to herself and to everyone around her that she is incredibly strong and she has what it takes. And I really love that she doesn't let her chronic condition affect her, and she never lets that make her feel any less than anyone else. If anything, she uses it to her advantage, because she's so used to living in pain that she, you know, can deal with a lot of these difficult situations perhaps better than people who aren't used to that kind of pain. So yeah, I did actually really enjoy our main character of Violet. Of course there is an angsty enemies to lovers situation in here. There's a bit of a bad boy, would we say, character in here who's the love interest, who has secrets, and he's actually in the year above, and it's just juicy, angsty romance. and it's fun, and there's dragons, and I really like the fact that the dragons are quite funny. Like, humans who bond with dragons can speak to them through their minds, and there was this quite fun dialogue between the dragon riders and their dragons, and yeah, it's just a fun concept. If you want to suspend your disbelief, if you're in it for a good time, if you enjoy spicy scenes, there's some great smutty scenes in here, and if you like that angsty romance drama, then I think that you're going to really enjoy this one, and I can see why it has received so much hype online. So yeah, there was that one. So yeah, I had a really successful reading month in June. I enjoyed everything that I read. The Wager is definitely my favourite, probably closely followed by Muse of Nightmares by Lani Taylor. But yeah, some really lovely reads. Please let me know what you read this month. What was your favourite? I'd love to have a little chat with you down below. Have you read any of these books that I've read? What did you think of them? Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? I'd love to have a little chat with you. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. Please do give this video a like if you enjoyed it, because it does really help out my channel, and if you haven't subscribed already, please do consider doing so if you want to hear some more from me. And yeah, I guess I'll see you next time with another video. Bye!